Hey everyone, welcome back to our mini teaching series titled The Final Days of Jesus. And if you missed out on yesterday's teaching, just go back to our Facebook page. It'll be there for you. And so here we are. We're excited to go in and jump into part 2 of the final days of Jesus. So once again, if you have your Bible, if you have your phone or tablet, turn to the New Testament in Mark chapter 11. And I'm really excited about this story in particular because it's super weird. It's super strange. This would be one that you read and you're like, I don't really understand what's going on. Next. And so buckle up because this one's going to be a little more intense, all right? Of all the 5 teachings that we are doing in the final days of Jesus, this one's probably the hardest to follow along. I will do my best with it. So if you will, Mark chapter 11. Remember, Jesus had just rode in from the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem on this donkey that we unpacked yesterday. And the idea of yesterday is they're missing out on the expectations of who Jesus was. And how do we respond well when we feel disappointed by Jesus? And so Jesus rides on the donkey. He enters the city. It says he looks around a little bit. It's getting late. And he goes back on the other side of this hill and he spends the night. And it's now the next day, and Jesus is going to leave this city called Bethany. He's going to leave the city, come back over the Mount of Olives, and enter Jerusalem again. And this gets fascinating. Mark chapter 11, verse 12. The next day, when they, referring to Jesus and his 12 disciples, his 12 friends that had been doing ministry together, when they went out from Bethany, remember Bethany was that city just on the other side of the Mount of Olives, he was hungry. So Jesus has some hunger pains going on right now, and many of you probably are feeling that as you watch this video. He was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree with leaves, he went to find out if there was anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. Now continue, stay in here, because it's really interesting. And he said to it, so Jesus is going to have a conversation with this fig tree. May no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples hear it. So this is Jesus cursing the fig tree. And you sit back and go, why is Jesus cursing a tree? Well, we're going to unpack this now to understand a little bit about a fig tree and what it represents in the ancient world. Now, I want to give you a picture of a real fig tree in comparison to what I would say a normal height human is, and I am not a normal height human. Here's about a 5'6", 5'5", 5'6" lady, and there are 2 fig trees right there. A fig tree can grow up to about 20 feet in Israel, and what is so fascinating about a fig tree is it produces this beautiful fruit. And that's what Jesus was after. When he's hungry, he's hoping that this fig tree has figs, this fruit on it, because he wants a little snack as he's entering into the city of Jerusalem on his final days. Now let's unpack a little bit what a fig tree is and what it produced in the ancient world. A fig tree was it was candy of the ancient world. Like this was the Snickers of its day. Or maybe some of you, the Andes Mints or the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups of the day. Now, the fig trees produced figs twice a year. It produced the crop. You had what was known as an early fig. The early fig would come out about the month of June or a little bit before, maybe early May or mid-May, but that is considered the early fig. Then the trees would blossom again and produce what's known as the late fig. And the late fig would be produced in about August or so. So you're looking for us Michiganders, late August, early September, where sometimes we hit maybe a little bit of fall weather, but we're really at the tail end of summer still. So the fig tree produces an early fig in June, May, June, and the late fig, Auguste, somewhere right in there. And here's another important thing, that the fig tree is a symbol of leadership back in the ancient world, okay? So hold on to all those thoughts. Now let's jump back into the story in verse 13 and understand what Jesus does here. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. So Jesus is going to this fig tree knowing it's not the season, but he sees the fig tree with the figs on it. So what is Jesus? Because this is during the springtime, they're during Passover time. What Jesus is hoping for is the late fig, those figs that are produced on this tree in August, because sometimes it would have a false off-season producing fruit, that sometimes that late fig will survive winter and still have the leaves and fruit on it. So when Jesus approaches this fig tree with leaves on it, even though it's not season yet, it's not early fig, he's hoping, since I see this thing with leaves, perhaps then it still would have the late fig on it. And he gets there, and it doesn't. And he's a little mad, and he curses this thing. Now what's interesting is Jesus leaves this scene. And remember, the disciples hear Jesus curse this thing. Jesus now will leave this fig tree, and he makes his way into the city of Jerusalem. Here is a model of the city of Jerusalem. And this section right here is known as the temple. That's where you are making your arrival. What happened in the temple for people during this time is the temple represented a place of people to get spiritually filled. They would go here for prayer. They would go here for sacrifice, for forgiveness. They would go here for the access to God. And there are throngs of people coming into Jerusalem during the Passover festival, coming in here all over the place. So this place would be packed with people. And one of the things that was done here was the sacrifice of an animal. And now remember, people are coming here during this festival with expectations to be spiritually filled. They're going to make those sacrifices. They're in what we would consider the house of God. That's where they are. They're praying. They're renewing their relationship with God. And remember what happened right prior to this. Jesus curses the fig tree because he had expectation that he would be physically filled, that his hunger would come from this thing. Now hang in there with me. This is where it gets interesting. If it hasn't already, Jesus will come in here and kind of stir the pot a little bit. Jesus is going to make his way after he curses the fig tree. The fig tree did not meet his expectations. It didn't fill him physically. He's going to make his way into the temple and do some things. He's seeing that people are getting swindled. There's an exchange that's happening of money and of buying of animals to sacrifice to God during the Passover. And he gets upset because it's not functioning the way it should function. The temple isn't. And so Mark chapter 11, verse 17 says this, when Jesus is getting upset, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of thieves. And he's saying, guys, what is happening here? You are not meeting the expectations. You are swindling people. And you guys are oppressing people. People were getting ripped off. And Jesus gets angry and he turns over the tables and chairs that the money changers were sitting on and exchanging money and ripping people off with their sacrifices and how much they were costing and everything. And the temple, my house, should be a house of prayer, not a den of thieves. And Jesus is angry because he's saying the temple is not functioning the way it should function. People are coming here to get fulfilled by the presence of God, and you guys are not doing the right thing. Now, I'm going to tie it all together. It's going to make sense here in a moment. Jesus makes his way, and he leaves the temple. As Jesus leaves the temple, they're going to walk by with his disciples that fig tree that he cursed. And here in Mark chapter 11, verse 20, this is what happens. Early in the morning, as they were passing by, the disciples, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots up. The fig tree withered. The curse happened. The fig tree was dead. Now remember, Jesus went to the fig tree with the expectation to be physically filled. And people go and run to the temple with the expectation to be spiritually filled. And here's the correlation. Remember I said that the fig tree was also a symbol in the ancient world of leadership. I'm going to tie the two. Jesus curses it. Says, you're not producing what you should be doing. And then he goes to the temple and says, you guys, this is supposed to be a house of prayer, not a den of thieves. You are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And he curses the leadership of the temple as a symbol of cursing the fig tree. And here, Jesus, in the midst of all of it, the function of the temple, what you guys were doing, people were supposed to have access to God that was bringing wholeness and healing to people, is now in the disciples' hands. Jesus is overturning an entire system in his final days. What they were doing in the temple will not happen in my kingdom. They're ripping people off. They're oppressing people. This will not happen. They're supposed to come to get God, to have wholeness and have healing. And guess what? I have cursed the authority of that temple by cursing this fig tree. And it is now on you, disciples. You will be my message in this world. And Jesus changed his address from the Temple Mount to our hearts. He's throwing away an entire system that says they're ripping people off. That is not me in my kingdom. And it's on the hearts now. I'm going to use the people to bring access to God, because in a few hours, in a few days, in a few moments, I'll be on that cross for everyone. And then my message is going to be spread to the entire world, not through a broken system. No. Because why? Remember, no one may ever eat of the fruit from you again. The fig tree and the temple authority, that's done. And Jesus was ushering in a new spiritual reality for people. It's not the temple system that's broken. It's going to be on the hearts of my people. So hopefully I was able to tie that on. It is such a bizarre story in the middle of Jesus' final days. So blessings to you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow for part 3.